Hey everyone, it's actually Jeb Bush, and today I have the distinguished pleasure to interview Matt Semelsberger, UFC fighter, aka Semi the Jedi. Thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so how are you doing? How's training been going? I know you've been sparring and stuff. How's that been going?
Good, man. Really, really good. Feel like I've been expanding my repertoire and like expanding my game probably more than I ever have, man. And it's like easy to say that each time, each fight, because naturally
Yeah,
you're gonna progress. But I think particularly right now, I'm in a really big like growth period. So I'm excited for the next fight, man.
that's awesome. That's really good to hear. I've been watching you fight, and you've been just performing and putting up like really spectacular performances. Whether and I know you lost last time in decision, but even then, like there's some moments in there where I was like, "Holy cow!" Like he's got like just the explosiveness, the athleticism. Like it really just shows through. Where like instantly you became one of my favorite fighters, like a couple fights ago. You're Semi the Jedi. That's your nickname. I know you like Star Wars, you like Marvel, you like comics, you play Dungeons and Dragons, you play video games. So I thought first off we could start with some like icebreakers here. So what are your favorites? What's your favorite Star Wars movie or show? What's your favorite character from Star Wars?
Okay. So favorite Star Wars movies, probably Return of the Jedi. Naturally, it's because it's like the final ending to like that bit of the Star Wars era. But
Hmm.
um, show wise, I love the Obi-Wan show. That was great.
Yeah,
I also like the Mandalorian. That was really good.
those are
And then,
both
dude,
so great.
I watched the Solo movie not too long ago, and I
Hmm.
hadn't seen it like, and it had been out for a while. But I actually really liked the Solo movie too. That was really good. But favorite character it has to be, well, probably in terms of the Jedi's, Obi-Wan is like my favorite, but also Qui-Gon. It's like a tie between him and Qui-Gon.
Yeah,
Then
those are two good
outside,
picks.
yeah, outside of the Jedi's though, man, like Chewie, dude. Chewie's awesome. Chewie's
Yeah. He's a great character too. Speaking of Obi-Wan, I believe your favorite Obi-Wan quote is if you define yourself by power to take life, the desire is to dominate, to possess, then you have nothing. And in the interview when you talked about that, I thought that was such a great quote to pull, specifically as a UFC fighter. And I was wondering what parallels do you draw between maybe being a UFC fighter and the way of the Jedi? Because I've heard you talk about that a bit.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I love that quote. That's just like it's not what it's about, like that for me at least, like the fighting and stuff like that. It's a so much more than just like a material, basically like a material thing. Like going back to the quote, like if you define yourself by like the ability to just raw take like in a power move, you know what I mean? On like something evil like that. It's a tough one to crack because I've been thinking about it for a while. And that quote, like I remember hearing that quote from the first time. I was like, dude, that does it for me, man.
Yeah, yeah, it's a powerful one for sure. What's your favorite Marvel movie or show and favorite character from that?
Marvel movie. I mean, I love Endgame. Endgame is great because it tied everything together. But original Iron Man probably was like my favorite movie, and then also even the original Spider Man, going back to like Tobey Maguire,
Yeah, yeah,
like
those
in
are
the
sick.
earlier movies. But that was really good. But I also like the X-Men a lot. Like Wolverine is probably one of, if not my favorite superhero.
Yeah, do you see that he's coming back in the new Deadpool movie, Hugh
Yeah, I did
Jackman?
see that. Yeah, that was
Dude,
fun.
I'm so hyped about that. That movie's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, love Wolverine. I love Hugh Jackman. Like he was just made for that role, dude.
He really was. He really was. And I'm happy he's at least getting one or two more stabs at it before he hangs it up. Because it'll be cool to see him in the Marvel universe with Ryan Reynolds. Because we saw him with Deadpool before, but that was as
Yeah, that
Ryan
was
Reynolds
weird.
as Deadpool, but that was not the Deadpool we all wanted. So
Yeah. Dude, that was a really weird Deadpool.
yeah, that was a super. super rough time, super rough time. And I'm glad that, I mean, there's an interview Ryan Reynolds did like when the first new Deadpool came out, and he had said that that was the Deadpool. He didn't want to play it, but they told him like, "Hey, if you don't do this, we'll recast someone else." And he was like, "I want to be Deadpool." That was like always his dream role.
Yeah,
And so as a result, he like went into that. But I think it opened the door for what we have now, which is cool to see.
right.
And then you stream a bit playing video games. What are some of your favorite video games to play lately?
Probably. So my number one, what's been my number one for a while, is Rocket League.
Oh hell yeah.
Rocket League's probably like my favorite slash most played game. Then after that, I was playing Apex Legends for a while. That was
Another
pretty
solid
fun.
game.
But then it's tough, man, because I'm on console and I'm trying to get on the PC grind very soon. But
Yeah.
console, dude, I swear it's so much harder because I play cross gen, like
Oh yeah.
so I can play with like my friends and stuff. So it's like it's tougher, man, playing against those PC players, dude.
Yeah, PC master race. Like if you don't have a PC, especially when you're playing cross gen, you're gonna get fried like
Oh
every
yeah,
time.
dude. Yeah,
Yeah,
but besides Rocket League, Apex, what have I been playing lately? I haven't played these. I'm gonna start playing them again because I need to like. It's like movies that you love rewatching. You know what I mean? Every now and
yeah,
again. But I love playing the Batman
dude,
series.
those
That shit
games
is
are
good.
so sick.
Oh yeah,
I They need to make a new one. Have you seen the latest Batman movie with like the Riddler and
is
uh
that with Robert Pattinson?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They need to.
Surprisingly, pretty good. Like it wasn't like amazing, but I actually thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I was blown away. I went in with pretty low expectations, and I think he nailed the Batman role and they nailed the villain role, which
Oh yeah.
yeah, so that was really cool. I would love to see them make a new game kind of based around that, or just revamp the Riddler in some sort of way.
Yeah,
I thought
well,
that was
I like the detective element that they put into it because that's what
Mhm.
Batman really is. He's like a super detective, basically,
Yeah, yeah,
and that was
exactly.
what's cool about the games too, because you get like you're doing a bunch of just like detective using all this bad technology and stuff like that. It's cool.
Yeah, and just because it's so open world, like when you unlocked a new gadget, you could be like, "Oh, I know where I can use this," and you go and find all these little things too. Those games are sick. Gosh. Now, so I'm about the same age as you. You're 29, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I turned 29 in 2 months. So I was like going through some of the stuff and I was like, "Man, we kind of experience things at the same time in our lives." So like I was in college when I played the Batman video games, and I would imagine the same thing for you, like
Oh
around
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah. Definitely a hardcore Batman playing era.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that. I remember that super fondly. So, when you're not playing video games or doing some of the more like nerdy stuff that you enjoy, when you're training, what's on the official Semi the Jedi training playlist? What are we listening to?
Oh, okay. So I have like a pretty deep mix of like, or I should say, a deep variety of things I listen to. But I like, I guess my top three genres, if you will, is like hard rock slash metal, rap and hip hop, and then like EDM and like electric stuff. But more specifically, like for rap, I like Logic. Um,
Okay. He's from
I
Maryland
like
like you, so that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, he's from Maryland, and then I like Nas is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Who else would I like? Oh, like old school like Biggie and stuff like that. A
So you
lot
really
of
like the old school rap, because even
yeah, like
Logic's
it's
kind of a old schooler
decent bit.
feel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously Eminem, I love Eminem. And then in terms of rock, like I like this band A Day to Remember.
Okay.
Metal classics. Like I love the classics too. Metallica, all those type of bands. Oh, Bullet for My Valentine. That's another hard one I like getting into. There's this other band called I Prevail. I like them a lot too. And then in terms of like EDM, man, there's so many artists out there.
Yeah. I'm
There's
not a
like
big I'm not a big EDM guy, but whenever
yeah.
like I have tons of friends that are into it, whenever they post like a lineup or something they're going to, I'm like, I don't know any of these names. I swear I just read a bunch of names earlier.
Oh,
Like,
dude, yeah. Well, it's like there's so many artists out there nowadays too, man. There's so
yeah,
many more.
it's so weird. Like live in such like a fast space where everything like technology and all this stuff just aids people to like go from like 0 to 100. And
Oh yeah.
I'm sure that's something you've experienced a little bit of, considering like you're in the public light, and to some level like you are a public figure as much as like you're a fighter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, particularly more so in my community right now where I'm from. Like, but that's how it starts for, anybody who, who gets more and more like exposure to the world, it gets on put on a bigger, I guess, stage, fighting being one of them. But that's just like as there's a whole bunch of different stages nowadays, man. But just from my
Yeah.
perspective, obviously the fighters in the UFC get a pretty big stage. So they get a decent amount of eyes put on them.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with some of the like crazy wins that you've had, I think like a highlight of that popping up on Twitter, like it gets even more eyeballs too. So
Oh yeah, big time,
yeah,
man.
in school, in high school, you wrestled, you played lacrosse, you played football, and then you played football in college too as a strong safety. So clearly, you're always like a super athlete. Sounds like this is something you kind of always wanted to do, like something athletic. I know you wanted to go to the NFL originally, but how do you think your skills in football, since you played it for so long, translated to the octagon? Like, what do you think you were able to take from that?
Just like movements, man. I guess like movements and reactions in terms of like when I played safety, like I had to kind of be like ambidextrous in terms of like what foot I would play off of. So like if
Hmm.
I was on the right side of the field, my left foot would be up. If I was on the left side of the field, my right foot would be up, and it would be like kind of everything and how I would cut and my responsibilities and like my movements would be very like I'm backpedaling, side shuffling, breaking on balls, and then having to tackle, and it's like a lot of very complex like movements. So I kind of got really good at moving my body around at like high speeds and stuff. So I
Hmm.
think that's one big thing that I took away from playing football at like the Division 1 level, man, is like by the end of it, I could move my body in all different directions like pretty quickly and like efficiently. So that's definitely translated big into my fighting because like I'm an explosive striker. Like I like
Yeah.
to be explosive and be like a power type of guy. But it's cool because like I do a good job of kind of using my athleticism to open up those opportunities. Not so much in my last fight, but that's usually what I do pretty well, man. And that's what I've been trying to work on a lot more
Hmm.
lately. It's just using my athleticism to open up the opportunities that I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, I think your fight against AJ Fletcher like really showed that. If we don't even want to talk about the latest fight, like that fight against Fletcher was like a great fight. Both of you guys performed, and you could see just like your footwork and your ability to react was like on point whenever he tried to come at you. So definitely see that. Do you enjoy playing or watching any sports outside of the UFC?
Yeah, I watch a little bit of college football, and then I pay attention a little bit to the NFL.
Hmm.
More so just like looking at highlights and stuff like that from like the games. I grew up in a Washington football household, so like we grew up like Redskins fans. Obviously the Commanders now, but
Yeah.
we were always Redskins fans, and then they changed the name. So I'm like still like a Washington football fan. I'll always be a fan, I feel like, but I just like am not invested into him like I used to be.
Yeah.
But I'd say football, and then I love watching hockey,
Oh,
NHL.
okay.
The Capitals, man, they're awesome.
That's sick. That's sick. So do you play any sort of like fantasy sports, or is it just more of like a pure fandom of the team?
I used to play. Well, I played a decent amount of fantasy football. Probably, yeah, I'd say the most out of anything. But in college, particularly, played a lot of fantasy football.
Mhm.
And then I played. I want to say I played last season or like the last 2 seasons, but I didn't play this year just because it's like don't have time for it, man. I'm
Yeah.
trying to focus even more on fighting and stuff. So that was like one thing even too after this last fight, which I don't mind talking about my last fight at all. Going
Yeah.
back to what you were saying before, but yeah,
Yeah.
man, just gotta sacrifice more and more time to train and to get better, man. That's like what I'm realizing that I have to do. So gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Yeah, yeah. I watched. It's actually interesting. Like to prepare for this interview, I watched like several interviews you've done, and I could tell like the evolution of like focus and determination that has built up as like you look like you had an interview that you did in March and then you had that live stream you just did like a week ago,
Mhm.
and just like the way you talked about like your training and your focus and like what you want to do, there was like a like significant difference there, and I was like wow, like you could just see like the determination and like the like how far you want to take this, which I think is really cool. And it's one of the reasons, like, when I first watched you, I was just instantly a fan. I was like, yeah, I would love to talk to this guy because I feel like he's like really trying to do something special here.
Oh yeah, man. That's why I love fighting, man. That's like probably the one of the biggest reasons I fight, man, is because it makes me just I feel like a more honest, genuine person, man. Like, and that not just to other people. I mean, like even just within myself, being honest with
Hmm.
myself and trying to become a better person, man. So that's why I do it. I love this fight game because it's like a journey and it's like constantly always humbling you and keeping you in check. So that's like a big reason why I do it, man. Big time.
Hell yeah.
And I
That's
think
dope.
that's shown definitely kind of like what you're saying, man. It's starting to show a lot more.
Yeah.
Because I'm learning my lessons and I'm heeding all the stuff that I'm bringing in. So
Yeah. Definitely. Have you had any fighters like, because you've been fighting for a little bit, have you had any fighters that like you really looked up to that have reached out to you, or fighters that like you were kind of surprised reached out or that you've gotten to know during your time in the UFC?
not yet in terms of like the UFC guys. I've met them here and there, but a lot of the times it's out in fight week, so they're getting dialed in and focused. But I want to say before I got into the UFC, I mean, like you're aware of like ONE FC and
Hmm.
Bellator and like some of these bigger world stage like leagues. So there's this dude named Ong La. I wish I could say his last name. It's like Unsong.
Hmm.
But Ong La was a dude who trained out of Maryland. He trains down in Florida under Henry Hooft now. But he was the ONE FC middleweight and light heavyweight champion. At one point, he was like a champ. But he like one of the best highly ranked fighters in the world for his weight class. And I remember like getting to spar with him like in my early pro days and stuff like that. And I always looked up to him a lot. And I still keep up with him, and stuff like that. But I used to be training with him a decent bit, back in my early pro days when I was getting to go out and have the honor of like sparring with him when he was getting ready for his fights. And then the other fighters there from, around my area, the Maryland and like DMV area would be there, some of the best top fighters from the area. So I would get to spar with them and fight with them. So all those guys, man, the local ones are probably had the most meaning to me because I've gotten to meet these guys and some of them who fought in the UFC and some of them, who have fought like in some of the highest levels of MMA, or kickboxing or jujitsu or whatever the sport would be. So I'm looking forward to talk and to connecting with more UFC fighters, then, man. For sure. Definitely made a few friendships. Like well, there's this dude named Tucker Lutz. He's from Maryland. I'm pretty tight with Tucker. We used to fight on cards back when we were on the regional circuit together. So it was cool because we're both in the UFC now. Over in like Camp Springs, Maryland, kind of going back to when I was saying I was training with that dude Ong. There's this place called Lloyd Irvin's Mixed Martial Arts, and they have like Sadiq Yusuf, who's one of the top. I think Sadiq's like top 15 or top 10 in the featherweight division now. But
Hmm.
then they have another dude named Tafan, who's a light heavyweight in the UFC. This dude Ron Stallings, he used to be in the UFC. And I would get to go there and spar with them, man. So it's like surrounded by a lot of really, really highly talented, like hardworking people who have been in the game for a while around me, man. So I'd say more of the local people around me.
For sure, that's sick. Are there any like UFC fighters that you grew up like idolizing, or even current ones that you really like look up to, or feel like your game or like your game plan relates to them?
Not necessarily in terms of my game plan relates to them, but my first favorite fighters were like Forrest Griffin was like my first favorite fighter, and then
Hell yeah.
Chuck Liddell was one of my first favorite fighters. Those two were probably like my first MMA heroes. And then nowadays it's hard to say, man, because there's so many good fighters.
Yeah.
But and it's the fact like I'm in the league, I'm in the UFC, so it's like as much as I look up to like a lot of these guys, I gotta have the attitude that's like, well, at the same time, I'm trying to outwork these dudes. So, uh,
Yeah.
but growing up and like when I was first getting put on MMA, like the Iceman, dude, the Iceman and freaking Forrest Griffin were like my homies.
That's sick. That's sick. So your Muay Thai coach is Sebastian Ramirez, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he says that your greatest attribute is your fearlessness and that you thrive when things get crazy. And then Kalen Moore, who was your best friend from your college football team, in his book, A Dream Too Big, he said that a ton of the players on the team were afraid of you because you just like dealt out vicious hits and were just super reckless, no regard for your body or like well being. And then your college coach, Scott Rumsey, he said you're an adrenaline junkie. You have reckless tatted on your knuckles. Like clearly, like this is like a lifestyle for you, and this is kind of who you've always been. How do you find a balance with this like recklessness and like the power that it can have in a fight while not like allowing yourself to overextend?
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard to say. Like, I guess it's one of those things where you have this like persona that you want to present to people, and people can say that they don't put up a front, but like, and I don't mean that like a fake way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everybody has a way they want to present themselves to people. So like that's like their persona, you know what I mean? That comes from who they really are. Of course, that's like their lighter side or that brighter side that they want to shine out. But then
Yeah.
there's also like, like that shadow self that you got, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like one of those things to me. But so originally, what was your like dial back a little bit just so I can answer this a little better. What were you originally asking?
So when you're in the octagon, how are you able to embrace that recklessness and
Right.
use that to your advantage, but not overextend and maybe expose yourself because you're being too aggressive?
Right. Yeah. So I just say like letting like channeling. So knowing when the right opportunity to let it all go is, you know what I mean? So it's like
Hmm.
you can't just go out there and just turn everything fully up to 100. It's like it's just natural, man. It's just like the net,
Yeah.
like it's like a natural law of the universe, man. Like you will wither and tire and slow, you know what I mean? That'll open you up to being finished, to being hurt, to being knocked out. So I feel like knowing when to unleash, knowing when to let go, and exercise that fearlessness is probably the most important thing. So like from a
Hmm.
timing perspective, to have good timing and knowing when to explode, and that's like definitely very relatable to like techniques and stuff like that. Even in a fight, you got to know when to explode, but you also need to know when to just relax and chill and breathe and calm down.
So one thing that I thought was actually really interesting about your journey in the UFC is that your career like had a bit of a rough start, and you even talked about how you kind of had some soul searching and how it caused you to quit fighting almost altogether.
Mhm.
And how did that experience, do you think, change you like as a person? And what's some advice you could give to someone who might feel like they're also at a crossroad, like maybe not in fighting, but with their career or a relationship or something like that? Because I think how you handle losses is just as important or more important even than how you handle wins, you know?
Oh yeah, dude. Like, sorry, it was like a big question. So just kind
Sorry.
of
I talk a lot.
bullet point it for me real fast one more time, and then
Yeah,
I'll
so
take it.
you had a rough start in your career, and you
Right.
you talked about like you might even quit. What made you stick with it, and how do you think that overall has changed you to be a better person, having
Okay,
to
cool.
deal with those losses and like really wrestle with that?
Yeah, man, just taking I think the big thing was just taking responsibility, man, and not like taking responsibility for it and not like throwing it away and shying away from like facing basically like facing my fears and facing the fact that, I was messing up
Mm,
and I was heading like in the complete opposite direction that I wanted to go in reality, you know what I mean? I think taking responsibility for my actions, and it's like a lot of times, and like this is just from personal experience, you know what I mean? I would shoot myself in the foot. It would be a lot of self sabotage, you know what I mean? That was like the realization that I really had to come to was like, bro, most of this stuff, if not like pretty much all of it, is your fault. You know what I mean? And
mm,
I don't mean that like I should say for a bit I was beating myself down like a lot, and that's like I for anybody who is listening, like don't do that to yourself. Don't beat yourself down too hard, but definitely need to like be real with yourself. And sometimes it's tough, man. Sometimes you do need to be like hard on yourself in a like positive way. As weird as that sounds, like I can get mad at myself, man. I still use this to this day, man. Like anger, it can be a very useful thing, man, a very motivating thing, but if it goes past a certain point, then it's just no good at all. And I was doing a lot of that, like going over that meter way too much back in those days, man, because I would just get so mad at myself for messing up, you know what I mean? Like letting my discipline slip and not doing the things I needed to do in order to be a great fighter and become a better person, like I was talking about, man. Like the fool wasn't following this journey like I originally intended to, and I
mm.
slipped away from the reasons and the values in which I started. You know what I mean? And I just like, dude, I dropped out of college to pursue this, man. So it's like when you look back on yourself and you're like, wow, I've made such a big decision, and you're just gonna just let this slip away. And you know what I mean? So I had to be really hard on myself, but at the same time, like I did have to pick myself back up and build back up, man. So I think
Mhm.
my advice for anybody out there facing something similar, man, is you just got to take responsibility, and you got to do what you can control. And there's very little in life that you can't control, but you can't control your attitude. You can't control how you think. As hard as that sounds, I know, people suffer from mental illnesses and stuff like that. So it's not as easy as just saying like, "Oh, just think better." You know what I mean? But you do got to try. You do have to. You know what I mean? You do have to try, and you have to. You have to. It's like a consistent fight, man. You just gotta keep battling, doing your best, and those small wins that you're gonna start accumulating are gonna start making big differences, man. And that was the big thing for me.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's not like I one day was like, oh, like I realized all this and I'm turning it around 100, like, and I changed every single part of my life that was bringing me down. It's like, no, man, like I just started changing little things at the time, and those small changes started becoming huge. It's like that trajectory analogy. It's like if you were talking about like something out in space, it's like, yeah, like you might like change its trajectory by like the tiniest little like millimeter, but over the grand scheme of the distance, that's going to be a huge difference of how you originally would have been.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. So
that's a good way of looking at it for sure.
yeah,
I think it's something a lot of young men definitely struggle with. I know something I struggle with in my like early 20s. You're in college, you're broke, you're trying to figure out what like you're in college basically determining what feels like the rest of your life. And it's really easy for sure to get down on yourself. And I totally agree. Like taking those little wins and just trying to make consistent progress and work towards it, I think is important. And I think it's a good message that a lot of people need to hear, especially at that age.
oh yeah, for sure, man. It's like be real with yourself, be honest with yourself, but at the same time, man, like don't let yourself don't tear yourself down.
Yeah.
Easier
Yeah.
said than done from personal experience, but
Yeah.
but that is the way. or at least for me.
Yeah, definitely. I always say, like, you will have a bad day. So why make a mediocre day or a semi good day like bad? Like,
Yeah,
you're gonna have a bad day soon enough, like everyone does. So just enjoy the good ones and make the best of what you have.
for reals, man. Could be worse.
Yeah.
It'd be like 10,000 years ago, and you're like freaking on the plains of some land, like dodging freaking other like killer tribes and freaking wild animals and like saber-tooth
Yeah.
tigers and
So you tweeted, like, I think 2 months ago, you said, "My name is Matthew, and in a few years, I will be considered one of the most entertaining welterweight UFC fighters on the face of planet Earth." Which, I mean, I loved it when you tweeted that. Instantly hit the like button. Um, but you seem like you're someone who's like a really genuine guy, really friendly, very open to like fans and people on Twitter. I've just seen you interact with people in various ways, and you seem very down to earth. And in the UFC, like there is this sort of necessity almost to like cause drama, like chase clout, like all this stuff, like brag and show off money or like talk a lot of shit. How do you balance the necessity of like needing to like create additional entertainment while staying true to yourself? Like, how do you feel about that whole culture in the UFC in general, even?
yeah, it's tough because it's like I don't want to be like you don't want to be fake about it, which I'm sure like you don't want to like put all this stuff out there just for the sake of like, oh, I gotta like put content out there and this and that, you know what I mean? Because then it's like what you put out there is probably not going to be super great in the first place
Yeah.
because of the fact of your like just the reasons you're doing it, you know what I mean? You're doing it to put content out there, not doing it because you like love to do it or like, you're having fun with it, you know what I mean? Like a lot
Yeah.
of fighters that I see like that do a lot of their extra stuff, they have a lot of fun with it, dude, and that's cool. Like I think that's awesome. But if you're just like doing it just to like try to, gain more followers and stuff like that, like I can respect it, man, but I wouldn't honor that. Like I wouldn't do it. But you know
Yeah.
what I mean. But at the same time, look, man, people are hustling. They gotta get more followers. More followers equals, more stock value, if you will. So I can see like the numbers game and like the business side of it and stuff like that. But at the same time, like you're kind of saying, like I'm more of the balance side of just like, you know what, if I feel like posting it, I'll post it. Like if I feel like I want to share this, I'll share this. I will say though, I would like to be like a little bit more like sociable. I am sociable obviously with people online. It's not like I'm not, but
Hmm.
I would like to share a little bit more of like my adventures and stuff like that outside of like my training and whatnot. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to like stream a little bit more. And then I'm working with a couple other my nerd buddies. Like we're gonna freaking come up with like some animated like type of cartoonish type of shows. My one homie like edits videos and like he got like a YouTube channel and he like has made like some animated shows just for fun. We play like D&D, so like do like voice acting stuff, like a bunch of just funny project like nerd stuff. But then on the side of that, like I have like my own little like gym slash like setup over at this one house. It's like technically my parents' house, which eventually they're probably gonna move out and I'm gonna take over. But their whole basement we have turned into like pretty much a full MMA like training area.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
sick.
we got like a power rack and a bunch of weights and stuff like that too. So I'm probably gonna hit that up a decent bit and try to work on that. But I want to be able to like, like post like videos from there. We're calling it like the Sunflower Dungeon. That's like the nickname for it.
That's hard.
So we call it like because we used to have it over at my brother's house. My brother lives on like a piece of like very like farmland area. Like he lives in it's like Woodsboro is the name of his city, and quite literally
Okay.
like it's woods everywhere and like farms. But we used to have it in his basement, but then we moved shop over from there over to like my parents' basement because they weren't using it. They're like, yeah, you can set all your stuff up there. Like my little brother, he's like a 10th grader, so it's like he can have it to use. So But yeah, man, we called it the Dungeon originally, but then we moved it over to my parents' house, and they live on like a road called Sunflower Drive, so we just call it the Sunflower Dungeon.
That's sick. That's
Yeah,
sick. How many siblings do you have?
I have one younger brother, one older brother, and one older sister. So I got three siblings.
Okay, so your older brother's the one that you want to open a gym with someday.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah.
That's sick. How does like when do you think that's happening? Do you think that's something like way off in the future, or is that something you're working at now?
Pretty near future. Yeah, we're definitely it's been in the works for a while in terms of like I mean the idea's always been there for a very long time, but then like when we had it originally at my brother's house, we were training like a couple of people who we had trained with before, but nothing like crazy high key, just very low key guys who we knew wanted to like get in a competition eventually. So like and we were helping them out because they were from the area. And then kind of like stopped doing that because I think I had gotten signed on for a fight, and then my brother was trying to get a fight and stuff like that. So it's like, coaching takes a lot of time, bro. So we were like, man, let's focus on training and focus on like just start fighting for a while, and then we'll dial back on our coaching stuff. So I think that's kind of the plan right now, man. Is like focus on my craft and focus on getting fights and kind of making my competitive legacy happen
Yeah.
and come to fruition. And then, who knows, man, we'll see probably in the next like 3-4 years, I'll have something, that's going to be official and start kind of operating the business. But
That's
that's
sick.
ideally in the future. I want to like run a gym, but I want to do it the right way. And some people can multitask and like do a whole bunch of different stuff, man. I'm kind of one of the type of people. I'm like, I need to pick this one thing and I can get really good at it.
Yeah. That's a good mindset to have, I feel like, especially when you're in a sport because you're able to focus and obsess on one thing instead of trying to break into all these other things.
Oh
So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think trying to build that momentum like both in your career and just like your brand even, I think that seems like a pretty good idea for sure. How does your family feel about when you decided? Like, I know, obviously, when you're like, "Oh, I'm going to drop out of college," they probably weren't thrilled about that.
No,
But
no.
how did they feel about you? How do they feel about you even now, like fighting in the UFC? I know you come from a military background, but it's a dangerous sport.
Oh yeah, man, big time. I mean, they're definitely like they worry about me, but at the same time, like they're like great parents, and they just realize that I am who I am, and they're not going to try to change that. So that's kind of how it was too, even when I originally like had first dropped out of college and stuff. So they were
Mm.
definitely disappointed, like they were not happy about it.
Yeah,
But they also were still supportive of me for sure. And
that's
it was
awesome.
going back to just them being just knowing who I am, man, and just knowing what I'm about. And it's like I told them I was honest with them. You know what I mean? I told them exactly like why I was leaving, and I was like, "All right, God damn it, all right."
Yeah, I feel like at that point, especially like so late in your college career, if you're making that jump, like they would assume that like you've thought about this isn't, and this isn't like a you woke up and decided to make it happen
Oh
type of
yeah,
deal.
what's funny because like I knew I didn't even tell them. I like actually I went and like to the registrar's office and like officially like filed all the paperwork, did all that, da da da. I did that before I told my parents that I dropped
Oh
out.
wow,
Yeah, because I knew if I told them beforehand, like they'd find some way to like convince
stop
me
you.
to stay or something like that. I'm just like, nope, not even giving them the chance.
Wow. Wow. I mean,
So
good for you for having that conviction. I think it's a tough decision to make. And like that's such a crossroads in life where it really like the decision you make changes your life for the rest of your life. So props to you for going for it. And so far it really seems like it's paying off and you're really pushing towards it. That's dope.
yeah, man, it's been a great experience, man. It's been a wild experience for sure, man. But I wouldn't have it any other way, dude. That's for sure. I'm thankful for both the positive and the negative for sure. It's just made me who I am today, dude.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it. Like you said, you can't control a lot in life. So, control what you can and just keep pushing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I know. I think it was in March when you did your interview. You said you were hoping to get like 3 or 4 fights in the year. You've had 2, and I believe you're saying that like, oh, like we're probably not going to get a standard 8-week notice camp leading up to a fight. But you think there's a good chance that you could get thrown into a fight or like pick up a fight short notice, right?
Yeah, that's at least what I'm hoping for,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty confident that it could and probably will happen. Just because it's the fight game, fights fall out. That's like it's what October, like what are we where are we at? Like almost mid October, a little early
Yeah.
October right now.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so it's like from here until the end of the year is like that's a lot of time and a lot of fights to pass, man. And I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, like I don't want I'm not praying for people to get injured or anything like that, man, because that's
Oh
messed up.
yeah.
But
Of course.
you know what I mean? But it is the fight game and fights fall out for, a bunch of different reasons, man. So I'm ready. I'm ready to hop in if I need to, or if I get that call, dude, because I would like to fight one more time before the end of the year, man. I would really like
Yes.
to.
So, as someone who's not a fighter, it kind of, if you could explain to me the difference between an 8-week approach and then a short-term notice, because whenever I'm like, whenever I hear like a cards announced, like for example, with the whole Diaz Hamzat fight, where it didn't happen, and then they're suddenly like, oh yeah, Tony Ferguson's going to jump in and Holland's going to jump in. Like to me, I'm like, oh, like why as a fighter would you want to jump in like when you don't have that 8 weeks to prepare? So can you talk to me about like how you stay ready and like how you prepare once you have a short notice fight?
Yeah, so it depends on like how short notice. So it's like if you're, like, say if it's like it's a week notice, it's like, all
Mhm.
right, well, all right. My thought right away goes to pretty much like getting right on a weight cut protocol,
Hmm.
because you only have a week to get to kind of do that, and you don't necessarily like start cutting weight a week out, but you start the process of doing it a week out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even usually in a standard eight week camp, you'll have longer to start that process, but. So like if it's like a week or less, man, you're pretty much just going right into to just skip into weight cut mode. And but like in terms of the why, man, like you like some people just like, and this is like me too, like it's just exciting, just like spur of the moment, like you know what I mean, something just flashes up right in front of you. It's like an opportunity,
Hmm.
just kind of like snaps into existence right in front of you, man, and it's exciting. And I think it's like also, at least for like me, like I think it's like a respect thing too. It's like I'm hunting for respect and I'm hunting for you know what I mean, not like necessarily recognition, but like I'm hunting to prove myself. So it's like that
Yeah.
opportunity, that short notice thing, that's like that's a real opportunity to prove yourself. It's a
Well, I
lot,
mean,
obviously a little bit more high risk because less preparation time is really the big key factor in like an 8 week versus like a 1 week notice type of thing.
yeah, I mean that's so wild to me whenever it happens. And especially when like I watch the fight and that short notice fighter performs. I'm just always like blown away. Like I know these guys are all like peak athletes, some of the greatest fighters in the world, but you're also fighting someone who's been preparing for 8 weeks, and
Yeah,
they might have been preparing for a different opponent, but like their body is a little more like aligned for that fight. So I
yeah,
think that's one of the most fascinating and as a fan, one of the most exciting things of the sport. Like when that whole Hamza thing happened, that ended up being like super exciting as a fan for them just being like, oh yeah, this isn't happening to like, oh yeah, here's 3 like new fights. Like go wild.
yeah,
And and getting to see like Diaz like end like that, I think was really cool too. So
yeah,
that's
man. With what was it? His I forget his what's his area code. That's like what the time was left when he finished
yeah,
it.
I think it was 203.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, dude. That's wild.
Crazy how all that stuff works. Any final words you wanna say to the people? Hopefully you have a fight coming up soon. We'll definitely all be rooting for you and hoping to watch you perform. Like I said, I think you're one of the most exciting and explosive fighters that I've seen in a bit. That's up and coming, and I think you have some real potential. And I mean, I'm rooting for you big time.
Great, man. I appreciate that a lot, brother. Yeah, just shout out to everybody who has been keeping up with me and, following my journey. Definitely going to be trying to get more, social with you guys and talk to you guys more and connect more. Because that's like, I'm a people person, man. That's my whole family too. We're just
Mm.
people persons, if you will. So I enjoy connecting with people out there. So I want to do that more often. Thank you, bro, for having me on. Like another person I get to connect with who's passionate about MMA and life too, man. So thanks, brother. Yeah, dude. If I'm ever out in Cali, man, I'll come through.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Well,
it. If I ever fight out in Cali, man.
dude, I'll be there. I'll bring the squad. Well, the
Hell
UFC
yeah.
Strike Squad will be there
Nice.
cheering you on. Hell yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. If you made it this far, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Make sure to follow Semi the Jedi on Twitter. I'm going to leave his Twitter in the description below, and make sure to catch him on Twitch or whatever else he's doing, because he's an exciting fighter and you don't want to miss out. You don't want to miss out. So thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me, Matt, and we'll see you guys later.
Heck yeah, brother. Appreciate it too, bro.